Let's go ahead and get into the action here. We have a few teams we're going to discuss. Like I said, Eastern Conference. We covered the Western Conference last week, and that's a whole battle in itself.
Sure.
But we cannot discount the Eastern Conference. It's not like it was 10, 12 years ago. It's hotly contested. There's a ton of teams here that are making noise. And Christian, I know you cover the Knicks quite a bit, and we're going to get to them here in a minute. But before we get to that situation, wanted to cover the top of the Eastern Conference here. It's going to be the Boston Celtics that we are hitting on number one here. So as the number one seed, I mean, their resume is super impressive. They're always near or at the top of the Eastern Conference. This season, they're currently 46-12 with an adjusted net rating of plus 10.1. That's number one in the league. And I think it's at a decent margin. And that's a number I got from Dunks and Threes, their database there. So when it comes to Boston, I mean, it's a team we've covered a little bit here on the podcast and what makes them so great. We've dove into the game of Derrick White a fair amount before. We were talking about all-stars. We talked about Porzingis. He kind of ties everything together for them on both ends of the floor. But really for them, I think the secret sauce is that deadly five-out offense that they can play.
Yeah.
All five guys are at the perimeter. They can all space. They can all drive. They move the ball quite well. And I looked up the numbers here for the Holiday, White, Tatum, Brown, and Porzingis five there. It's crazy numbers. They've played 1,033 possessions together, and the efficiency differential, so if we're taking the offense and defense differentials, putting them together, plus 15.4. Now, that's a pretty high number. I know I don't have kind of like a great basis to place that on relative to other teams, but just know it's a really high number. So these dudes are doing crazy work together. Just the three-point efficiency, the rim efficiency. They don't take a ton of attempts at the rim, but they're very efficient once they get there. And just that versatility they have on defense. You're not going to be able to find one player that you can pick on like a lot of other teams have. For instance, the Knicks, maybe someone like Jalen Brunson is a target on defense. That's not the case with Boston. All five guys can defend in their own right. They have length, they have toughness, and they have experience. They've played a lot of minutes together, specifically in the playoffs here. So, Christian, just want to get some of your thoughts here on the Celtics. Do you kind of have some of the similar thoughts as far as what makes them so formidable? And do you see anything of this team that can possibly even inspire an ounce of doubt as to whether or not they can just charge through the Eastern Conference and get back to the finals this season?
Nah, I think honestly, I think the East is a two-team race, right? I think we're looking at Boston and we're looking at Milwaukee. I think Cleveland kind of leapfrogged Milwaukee because they're, obviously the Bucks were dealing with defensive issues and they pinned that on the coach. And now they have Doc Rivers coming in and now you understand that, well, it's not an overnight success. That's going to take some time. Boston, it just to add on to all the things that you laid out, it's a level of selflessness that you see from that team where one night it's Tatum, the next night it's Derrick White, who's the guy who's giving it to you. The next night it's Kristaps Porzingis who hit 5 threes, right? It's just any time, any day, any game, someone different can be responsible for winning. And that just takes a level of buy-in. And not all players on all teams are willing to buy in at a level that the Celtics have because they've proven they've gotten to the NBA Finals and fallen short, right? They've knocked on the door of the NBA Finals for years on years on end and haven't made it. And now you've got a situation where here they have a time to. I think this is their year. If you ask me, I think they're the team that's going to the NBA Finals. They're going to come out on top. And I think this is a year where maybe we see Tatum's name in that MVP conversation because he's a guy where, he's the best player on the team that is standalone, the best in the league. Like you're looking at the Western Conference and they're several games ahead of the best team in the West right now.
Yep.
So just to add on to your point, yes, it's the defensive versatility. It's the 5-out. It's the spacing. It's Tatum's greatness, Jaylen Brown, two-way. It's all of that. But it's a level of buy-in and selflessness that's gotten them to where they are right now, especially when you consider having a coaching change and everyone over there loved Ime Udoka and to replace him and to bring in Joe Mazzulla and for Joe Mazzulla to kind of carry the torch the way he has. I think it's just a level of buy-in and selflessness has gotten them this far for sure.
Absolutely. If you're going to be a title contending team, you have to have sacrifice.
Yeah.
Everybody's going to buy into their roles. It doesn't matter whether they're starting or coming off the bench. I mean, everybody just knows exactly what their role is going to be, and they do it perfectly. And, I want to give a little bit more love to Derrick White as a connector here. Yeah. In years past, he's typically been kind of like a six-man, kind of shifting between bench and starting status. This season, when I went and looked at the leaderboard on dunks and threes, as far as the estimated plus minus, so if we're taking one number to kind of estimate a player's impact during a game, you're going to see all the typical names. You're going to see Luka and Jokic and Tatum and all these guys. And number 15 on that list is Derrick White. And he's right in between guys like Jalen Brunson and all these like superstars. They're number one options on these teams. And you got Derrick White sitting there with the estimated plus minus of plus 4.7 right there amongst some of the best names in the business. So as a guy like that on your team that, maybe it's the third or fourth option, like that is just an abundance of riches there on both ends of the floor. And then I think 2 or 3 spots down from him is Porzingis right there at
Yeah.
like 17, 18 in the entire league. So not to say that these guys are superstars, but their impact is on a level that is not matched by many other players. So that is kind of what ties them all together. They have the star power, but then they have the depth to kind of supplement them as well. And to go back to your point, Christian, about the Tatum MVP argument, he has a lot of things in his favor. You look at the box score stats, the 27 points a game, the 8.5 rebounds, really solid numbers. The efficiency is pretty good. 56% from 2, 36 from 3. He takes a lot of tough jumpers. Those are pretty solid numbers. And he's actually a solid two-way player. Estimated defensive plus minus of plus 0.9. That's 80th percentile. I think a couple of things that kind of hurt him a little bit. He's not as dominant as some of those other guys like Embiid and Jokic and Luka. And his efficiency is kind of middle of the road. He's not going to be somebody that's just like absolute deadly every single night from the field. And, sometimes he's a little bit shy about getting to the rim and really kind of forcing the issue in there. So it's nitpicking, I know, but it's kind of what you have to do if we're talking about MVPs of the entire league. But I mean, other than that, he's got a great resume. Like you said, best player and best team. So he has a lot going in his favor.
Yeah, and when you break it down even more, for example, I'll be voting. I have an MVP vote this year. I had an All-Star vote, and I'm looking at the standings right now, and the Mavericks are 7th in the Western Conference. Yeah. I love what Luka's doing. I can't bring myself to vote for the MVP as a guy whose team is 7th in the West.
Yeah,
right. Like I don't think I could do that. I think I would be more inclined to vote Shea as an MVP candidate, given what he's done with the Oklahoma City Thunder. And that might sound crazy to some because Luka, I mean, arguably the most electrifying player in this game right now, based on what he's able to do with a basketball at any given moment. But you just have to account for team success. And Tatum, it's not just this year. It's an extended period of dominance that the Celtics have had in the Eastern Conference. I think that just kind of gets overlooked because you kind of get used to it now. Oh, you're used to Tatum going out there and getting you 30. You're used to and to your point, yeah, Embiid is dominant, right? And I love Embiid and how he plays, right? Last time I voted, I think was the year that Jokic won, and I voted for Embiid because I thought that the dominance was what played a factor in that. But I think we're ruling Embiid out this year, right? Because he's going to miss a certain number of games. He's not going to get in there. I think at a certain point, you have to look at what Tatum's been able to do. You have to look at how the Celtics have been able to play, and you have to rule that in his favor in terms of just winning basketball, being the best player on the best team. And then to your other point, Derrick White is the guy that Tom Thibodeau always points out on the scouting report. He goes, yeah, Jason Tatum can get you, Jaylen Brown can kill you, but if you forget about Derrick White, then you're already lost, right? So, I think every team needs a guy like Derrick White. He's a guy who, again, selflessness, doesn't care about when he gets the ball. He knows how to play his role. He's going to fit in, do the little things, do the dirty work. Yeah, man, I love Derrick White's game. He's a guy that every team could use.
Fantastic guy, fantastic glue guy, role player. And even some nights, you think about what Thibodeau was saying. I mean, yeah, he can absolutely kill you with 4 or 5 threes, 2 steals, 2 blocks. But we had a prior podcast and we highlighted him before. I think it was maybe a few weeks before All-Star. We talked about how, defensively, he's an absolute destroyer at the rim as a 6'4" guard. So just having that in his favor helps so much. And to tie that all together, I think that's what makes them probably the favorite, if not in the East, and even in the entire NBA as far as making the NBA Finals again. Trying to think of an opponent that can possibly really give them problems. For me, I don't know about you and how you feel about New York's chances here, but I think Miami still has the best chance. We've seen it multiple years in the past. They knocked them off, twice and they played them and they lost by literally, it came down to a last shot that third time.
Yeah.
I think they just have the coaching, the personnel, the toughness. They also have a level of versatility on defense, having Bam in the mix and Jimmy to really give them problems. So, I mean, if I had to find a team that can possibly knock them off before the finals, Miami's still probably going to be my pick, even though they still have some flaws. Would you have a counter to that? Or
that's tough. I mean, we're going to get to the Bucks. I still like the Bucks. I like the Bucks a lot. I think that Dame pickup. I think that, and we're going to get there. I think we were all foolish. Anyone who thought that they weren't going to fall off defensively when you move Drew Holiday and replace him with Damian Lillard, I got a bridge to sell you too. If you thought they were going to be the number one defensive team or in that top 5 after making that trade, obviously not. But once they get that offense clicking and once they get things the way it's supposed to be, Dame is a big game player, right? Giannis is playing for a championship. I like Dame's odds in a series against Drew Holiday and Derrick White. For example, I thought Drew Holiday and Derrick White were going to give Jalen Brunson problems. He gave him 35. You know what I'm saying? Like it doesn't always even out to great defenders neutralize great scorers. So I think it'll be interesting. I think to your point, Miami also, yes, you can't. Miami and the Knicks are matched up right now 4-5. If that's who the Knicks end up drawing, God bless you. I don't know if the Knicks are going to be able to get out of that series, but then again, it depends on health because OG has to come out. We'll get into the Knicks stuff, but to your point, I like Milwaukee. I don't know if I like Milwaukee in a series against Boston because Boston is tough, and I think they just have that nucleus and that chemistry over a large span of years, and Milwaukee's still trying to figure things out, looping Dame into the fold. But Miami is a tough matchup for anybody, especially Boston.